Hello and welcome to a look at Pang for the Amiga, a Metro Arcade original that was converted by Ocean France and released by Ocean. This game has got a plot, believe it or not, and the plot is as follows. The balloons are coming. Apparently the balloons are not satisfied just floating around looking pretty. No, they have decided to infest 17 different locations of the world, bouncing around, being annoying, and whatever else balloons might be. Yeah. Pang, our hero, has decided that that is not a good thing for balloons to do, so he takes on the task of traveling to the 17 different locations of the world, popping balloons as he goes. Now, of course, these balloons are not just normal balloons, that would be too simple. When you hit a balloon, it will split into a smaller part of itself, or into two smaller parts of itself, until it has split into the smallest part possible, and then they will disappear once popped. The different balloons' sizes has a further implication, because the bigger they are, the larger they bounce, and the slower they move. So as you split balloons, you will have to take into account that the balloon splitting can surprise you, because they have a shorter bounce and move slightly faster than the previous size. Now, Pang, of course, needs something to pop the balloons with, and for some bizarre reason, he has decided that a harpoon gun would be an ideal thing to use against balloons. I suppose needles were too simple a thing. And his harpoon gun, of course, being a harpoon gun, comes with a rope attached. So as long as the harpoon or the rope is on the screen, any balloons touching the balloon, the rope or the harpoon itself will pop, which is something that becomes incredibly useful. And yeah. In order to delve further into that, I will have to cover the power-ups, because of course, I mean, you can't have a game like this without power-ups, and power-ups is a thing that you are given from time to time. I have yet to discover a distinct pattern in the power-ups. Sometimes it seems to be locked into only giving you 2, and then sometimes it will give you slightly more than that, so I can't really tell whether it's one thing or the other. But the power-ups available are as follows. You have a hook for your harpoon gun, which means that once the harpoon hits the top of the screen or any other solid object, it will stay on screen for 2 or 3 seconds, popping any balloon that might pop in or bump into it. But that, of course, also means that you can't fire another harpoon unless you've got one of the other power-ups, which is dual harpoon shots, which allows you to fire off 2 harpoons. Then you have the Vulcan missiles, apparently, which is a very, very rapid firing thing you can fire to pop the balloons, but they come with a bit of a caveat, because they cannot destroy destructible blocks. So you can find yourself in a position, if you pick that one up and you still got balloons trapped behind blocks that needs to be destroyed, you have to let the timer run out in order to reset the level, basically, which is something to be mindful of. You also have an hourglass that will slow down the balloons, and then you have a clock thing that will freeze the balloons for a certain amount of time. And when you freeze the balloons, the hitbox of the balloons is removed, so you can stand on top of them and pop them. And they are blinking ahead of time, so you know that they're about to start moving again, so yeah. Then you have the dynamite, which is a double-edged sword, because what it does is it causes all the balloons on the level to turn into the smallest balloons available. And that means that you can pick that one up at the wrong time and suddenly get swarmed and overwhelmed, and find it incredibly difficult to avoid getting hit by one of the balloons, which will of course cause you to lose a life. Losing a life means that the scene resets, which is not necessarily a bad thing based on what I said earlier with the Vulcan missile power-up thing. Let's cover the technical side of things. I should mention I have seen this arcade original, but I've never played it because this is not the type of game I would have played in an arcade, because I think playing arcade games were too expensive for titles like this. Mileage may vary, some people may have a different opinion, but at least I know how the arcade looked and sounded and that kind of stuff. Graphics-wise, this game is 95% identical to the arcade original. I was about to call them bubbles, the balloons even, they look sort of balloon-like, and the main character is identifiable as a young guy with a harpoon gun kind of thing, and all the backgrounds and the different areas you visit have a certain resemblance to the area they are connected to, so you can identify them based on that. The graphics work exceptionally well, and being as close as they are to the arcade original, as an arcade conversion you can't really fault the graphical side of things. The sound effects are incredibly satisfying. The arcade original, when you pop a balloon, sounds more like an explosion, whereas the pop that is used in the Amiga version I think is much more fitting and also significantly more satisfying. And of course the annoying sound when the hero loses a life and bounces off the screen is a nice little touch. The music is a variation of the arcade original's music, and I actually prefer the Amiga version's music because it's got more depth. The arcade original's music style is a bit like a splash wave theme of Outrun, which is very, very mellow, and while it's very enjoyable in its own way, I do find the Amiga's music sounding better. Again, opinion. The controls are what you hope them to be. Left, right, up, down will move your cursor in those directions, and yes, you will need to move in those directions from time to time. And the fire button will be used to fire off your harpoon gun or Vulcan missiles or whatever else you might need to do. And the controls are responsive, and yeah, no complaints there. I intended to cover the Commodore 64 version of this particular conversion, but it is, in all honesty, atrociously bad, so I decided to cover this version instead, and I'm glad that I did. Because this particular conversion is definitely not bad in any way, shape or form. The gameplay basics are somewhat simple, I suppose, but it is entirely enjoyable, and the fact that it allows you to play with another player simultaneously, whatever it is people call it, definitely adds to the enjoyment, and it saddens me a bit that I didn't have the option to try that out, because I get a feeling that this is a bit like the Bubble or whatever it is people call that game, where it's enjoyable when you play by yourself, but it's 10 times more enjoyable when you play with someone else. The only issue I have with this version is that load times can be a bit on the long side. From reaching game over to playing again takes longer than it should do, but once you're in the game the load times are very, very quick, so it is a minor thing. As an arcade conversion, this is outright excellent, there's no other word for it. So on that note, thanks for watching, take care, I'll see you next time, bye bye for now.